Hey guys, and welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. This is Dr. Mike Ronsisvalle. Super glad that you're with me today. It is part two of the last Wellness Wednesday, where we started talking about how you can change your beliefs. And really we kind of took up the idea that what's one of the most important things you can do in life, apart from decisions you make about the ultimate realities in life and the decision to just love people. One of the most important decisions you can make is how to change. Like, how do I really begin to go after change in my life, and how do I shift from things that seem toxic or unhealthy or messed up or broken, and really find the ability to engage new behaviors and live a new life. Ultimately, that's what I do with people every day, right? That's part of every therapy session, is helping people begin to understand really ultimately what does change look like, and how do I do this? I mean, we all want to live new lives, right? Every January, people want to live a new life. I hear my New Year's resolutions, and here's what I'm changing. And half the time we get to February 1st and we've already abandoned all of our goals. And that's sort of a metaphor of what we do all day, every day. We have good intentions. Almost everybody has good intentions, right? We want to be better. We want to shift. We want to start, doing the right things and stop doing the wrong things. I want to stop yelling at my kids, and I want to start really speaking life into them. I want to stop arguing with my wife all the time, and I want to start really leaning into that relationship and thanking God for the gift that she is. All the things that we all want. But it's one thing to want change. It's another thing to know how I actually get it. And that's what we're talking about. So I'm going to quickly recap last Wellness Wednesday. If you didn't get a chance to join us on that one, just go check it out. It's all archived. You can find it. But I'll go over sort of exactly what we talked about. I mean, we started with ultimately just what are beliefs, like the idea that, we do have these structures, these things that drive our behavior and in many ways our emotions. We looked at why beliefs are so hard to change. We talked about things like confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance, and just changing your identity and all the neural pathways connected with old thoughts, old core beliefs that make it really, really hard to shift. Then we got directly into core beliefs, and I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. That's what all my psychology training is. Most psychologists are cognitive behavioral therapists. That whole philosophy of change, of CBT, is based on ultimately shifting our core beliefs. So we leaned into, what core beliefs are, which is ultimately the core ideas that we have about what makes us acceptable and worthwhile and significant and valuable and lovable, and what makes us okay in this world, what keeps us safe even. And that identity that we attach to all those things becomes the lens through which we view every situation, every relationship in life that we encounter is filtered through those core beliefs that we have. Then we started to get into how we can really begin to actually change our beliefs, because that's the money ticket, right? Like, that's the money shot. That's why we're doing this. So I introduced the idea of change or die last time. And just to refresh you, they went to cardiovascular patients and they said, hey, either you change your lifestyle, the way you eat, your patterns of exercise, how you manage stress, or you're going to die. Like, your heart is messed up. You got some issues that are pretty severe on the cardiac level. And if you don't change some things, you're going to die. And what did we say? Like, the majority of people chose die. Like, they could not change their behavior. They couldn't change the way they were eating. They couldn't do anything that ultimately was going to keep them safe and allow them to continue living. And then someone said, hey, how do we get people to actually change. And they found that if people went all in and they pursued sweeping change in their life, like, I'm going to change everything and I'm going to be radical in the way I change, they found that those people actually were able to choose change. They were able to start exercising and change their diet and manage their stress. And I have lots more information about how all that played out. And you got to go back and watch the last Wellness Wednesday if you didn't catch that. But where we left off and where we're going to start today is looking at some of that research on cardiac patients and how we can apply that to our life, and especially on how we can apply that to the idea that change is possible when it comes to our beliefs and our core beliefs. So in order to do that, I'm going to give you a little scenario. I'll go back to it over the course of the next few minutes, but we're going to talk about Alex, right? Alex, he's actually based on a client that I had a few years ago, and he had some very clear negative core beliefs. Things like, I'm just not good at relationships. I can't do people. I like numbers and I like strategies and I like structure, but people are tough. And because of that belief system, man, every interaction that he had, he was guarded. He ultimately anticipated rejection. It's a matter of time until I'm rejected. If people really knew me, they would most certainly reject me. And he often behaved in ways that would bring about literally the outcomes that he feared. So he would be distant and cold and cautious, and that made people think that he wasn't friendly and he wasn't interested, made them what? Reject him, right? I mean, you see how our beliefs ultimately create our reality? So we're gonna go back to Alex over the course of the next few minutes, and as we do that, I want to integrate that framework about the cardiac patients, because I think that it's going to give us some grist for the mill with the real person that I used to work with. And I want you to know that when I did this work surrounding core beliefs with Alex, and I looked at helping him develop new hope and new skills and new thoughts, that change absolutely took hold in his life. So let me unpack that for you a little bit and tell you how that played out. So the first thing we talked about with Alex was the idea that in order to ever change, to truly change, in order to really ever get in a point where you're gonna make lasting change, you have to have hope. It starts with hope that change is actually possible. And so that change or die framework stresses that without hope, change is almost impossible. And hope, that whole, that feeling of man, I can change my future. The future will be different. I have hope that things are going to begin to morph and shift and transform. That hope almost always emerges by relating to other people who've made similar changes. It's seeing someone change that invites the belief that you can too. And this probably doesn't surprise a lot of you, right? Think back over your life. You probably made some pretty significant shifts after hanging out with other people that had made those same significant shifts. The people that we're around are the very entities that give us hope. Watching them change helps us feel like we can change. Why do you think AA works? Alcoholism is one of the hardest things in the world to change. It is tough once you have those neural pathways of addiction in place in your brain. How in the world do we get to a point in our culture where one of the solutions for alcoholism is you go sit in a room with a bunch of other alcoholics? It doesn't even make sense. And people hate it, by the way. Before they go, they are so resistant. When I try to get people involved in AA and talk to them about engaging the process, at least 75, 80% of the time, it's like, no way, man. I'm not going in those rooms. That's weird. I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to hear anybody else talk about it. It kind of triggers me. All the excuses. But what do we know? AA helps. Why? Because you're sitting with people, a lot of them who are further along in the journey. And do you know what an AA meeting actually consists of? They do not go in AA meetings and read from books and teach coping skills and teach relapse prevention. That is not what AA is. It's a collection of people who tell stories and who ultimately tell their story. Did you know that? So if you've never been to an AA meeting or any kind of recovery meeting, most of what happens in that meeting is someone gets up. They usually talking to a mic or talk loud enough for everyone to hear, and they say something like, "Hi, my name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic." You've seen this on TV, right? If you've never been, you know what happens. "Hi, Mike." That's how the structure is. But what happens next is Mike tells his story. Here's what I've been through. Here's what alcohol did to me. Here's how long it took me to get sober. Here's how many times I relapsed. Here's why it's been hard. Here's the amazing parts about what's happening now in my life, now that I'm free and I'm clean and I'm sober. And those relationships and just hearing people tell those stories, it gives someone who's struggling with alcohol some hope, man. Like, maybe I can do this. And there's something powerful about relationships. There's something powerful about being around people that have made the changes you want to make. If you want to get a hold of your health and you want to start exercising, for instance, you know what helps a lot? You know this. Start hanging around people that exercise. If you want to get more able to talk about things that matter and things that are meaningful and just deep things that have richness and that make a difference in this world, you know what helps? You know, it's get around a bunch of other people that are willing to have those conversations. Community is huge in regard to change. Why? Not because there's something magic about hanging out with people, but because there's something magic about what happens inside of our brain and our body, and really, I believe our soul, when we get around other people who are living the life we want to live in a really healthy way. It inspires us. It gives us hope. And Alex, look, man, when he would get in rooms, we put him in our intensive programs at LiveWell. Intensive programs is where you do a few sessions a week, but you also do a lot of group therapy. And he started to get around people, and he heard them say things like, Alex, I believed I was unlovable. That's exactly where I was. And now, I'm in a healthy marriage. Now I'm getting along so much better with my team. Now I'm able to, function socially, relationally. And that hearing those stories, being around those people, it connected him emotionally, not only to them as individuals, but it connected him to his future and to a future that could be different. He started to believe it's possible that I could shift my view of myself and shift the way I deal with people and what I believe about me. And guys, that's where hope was birthed in Alex's life in the context of relationship. And if you're ever going to change your deep-rooted beliefs, these things that they've been getting you for years, and I just can't get out of this mindset. If you're ever going to change, you better get around people that are going to encourage you. You want to see who you're going to be in 5 years? Look at your 5 closest friends. You're very, very likely to be living the life that they're living. Why? Because modeling, because being around people inspires change. We literally morph into and become the people that we hang around. If you're ever going to change, you need hope. Number 2, If you're ever going to change, you need new skills. You need new skills. The researchers that looked at that cardiovascular study and they examined all this cardiovascular patients, they recognized really early that you couldn't just put people out there and say, okay, go change your life, go all in, risk everything you've got on all the cards you have in your hand right now. That is not what they could do. Why? Because people don't know what to do. Even if you're really hopeful, if your hope doesn't have a target, if it doesn't have tangible benchmarks, if it doesn't have measurable results, it's just a dream. It's just like this thing I want. So your hope has to be attached to these new skills, these new habits that you're going to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this because it's healthy, and I'm going to do it more than anybody else is willing to do it. So those cardiovascular patients, man, they got with trainers, and the trainers taught them how to lift weights. They taught them how to do resistance training. They taught them, man, here's how you run and do cardio in a way that actually makes a difference. It actually builds your cardiovascular health. Repetition, repetition, repetition. That's what's key. Think about a basketball player. I talk about this often. Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, would not leave practice when practice was over. Do you know what he'd do? He talks about it often before he died. He'd stay in the gym, shoot 1,000 extra free throws over and over and over. Man, he'd work on, here's how the ball feels coming off of my fingertips for the free throw. Here's my footwork. Here's how I bend my legs. Here's how my arm feels when I go up for the all those little bitty micro movements. He became an expert in them. And guys, I'm telling you, the repetition, the pattern building, the work he put it in. All of it. And we know the outcome. And that metaphor for us is huge because until we have new skills, we're going to struggle to make our dreams actual goals. We're going to struggle to actually change. CBT, this therapy that I practice as a psychologist, calls this behavioral experiments, which are basically small, deliberate tests that are designed to essentially speak against your beliefs and gather real world evidence. So for Alex, we came up with things like, okay, you're convinced you're unlovable. It's a matter of time before people reject you. People aren't interested in you. They're really not interested in knowing you and being with you and hanging out with you. So what could we do? What little test could we create that will give you real world information about that? So we did things like, okay, you've got to ask 5 people to coffee or to lunch this week. And so he would invite people for coffee, invite people for coffee, repetition, repetition, repetition. And his belief when he was inviting people to coffee, remember, was it's a matter of time. Like this person's going to reject me. They're not meeting me for coffee. We had him journal all those fear thoughts. Write it all down. I'd encourage you to do that. And then what he recognized is, not everybody accepted his invitations, but a lot of people did. Most people did. And he would go on those lunches and go grab that coffee, and he'd come back and tell me, man, I'm kind of shocked and surprised, but it's not as awkward as I thought it'd be. And over time, those successful small actions repeated over and over again built a new story. It's like you're building a new foundation of experience. And when you're living in the lies and you believe all the negative things, that depression and anxiety and fear, discontent, all the things that it tells you, then you never really allow yourself to fully embrace the hope that's resident in the new skills, the new patterns. Like, man, I can go out there and do something different. I'm going to do the next healthy thing. And what happens next is you wake up one day and you've changed. Oh my gosh, I've been to the gym every day for 60 days. Oh my gosh, I've been on 4 dates in the past 3 weeks. If you're going to change your beliefs, you need new hope. You need to get around people. You need new skills. You need new patterns. You need to know what you're doing next. Like, what's the next healthy thing for me to do? If I want to lose weight, here's how I eat healthy. If I want to start exercising, here's the workouts I'm going to do. I'm going to learn how to do them. And then I'm going to do them over and over and over and over again. And then the third thing you need is you need new thoughts. You need new thoughts. And so CBT is really based on this idea that thoughts create feelings and feelings drive behavior. So if you're ever going to change your core beliefs and change like those core just desires that you have or beliefs about yourself, you're going to have to begin to reframe minute by minute, moment by moment, what's going on in the battleground of your mind. And you have to adopt that new thinking. You have to allow yourself to say, I'm going to trust the new thoughts. So CBT is known as cognitive restructuring. So, when we're working with people, when I was working with Alex even, it's identifying automatic thoughts. You look at the core beliefs that are underneath those automatic thoughts. You spot the distortions like all or nothing thinking or mind reading, just all these cognitive distortions that shift the way you feel about you, right? They really do drive your feelings in the moment. It looks at what I call Socratic questioning. So is that always true? Is there another way to think about this? Is there something as far as an alternative explanation that might explain why people said that or did that? And so the whole time that we're working with people for cognitive behavioral therapy, we really are seeking to help them begin to shift that negative thinking and develop brand new thoughts based on the hope with the confidence of the new skills. So for Alex, the original belief was, if I do have an opportunity to be with someone and to talk to someone, I'm just going to embarrass myself. I'm just not going to be enough for them. And so over time, we were able to kind of reframe that and say, okay, I'm a little Asperger's sometimes. Sometimes I misread signals. But more often than not, things kind of go fine. And the more Alex could lean into that thought, like sometimes I misread, but oftentimes I do fine, the better he felt. The new narrative changes the internal experience. It does. I know that sounds crazy. It sounds too good to be true, but you're stringing pieces together. Now remember, you're not, in Alex's case, we didn't just say, get around a bunch of people that have changed their view of themselves in relationships and have healthy relationships now, and develop the ability to go out and think happy thoughts about it. That's not what we did. Remember the skill part. Number 2 is skills, new skills. So Alex had to try to understand, how do I relate to people? And what are the strategies that allow me to be seen by people and allow me to see other people? But once you have the new hope and the new skills, your job is to lean in to the reality that change is possible. And I've got to allow myself to believe and trust that change is possible. And as you do that, those little shifts in language, even in your narrative, that shifts your internal lens as well. And guys, it can be very, very powerful. New hope, new skills, new thoughts. Got it? All right. So let's talk about how we pull a lot of this information together and begin to get some leverage towards changing our thoughts. How are we going to put it into practice? Number 1, it's helpful if you can begin to identify core beliefs. Like, what are your core beliefs? If you can't answer that question, what's the core idea I have about me, my life, what makes me acceptable, worthwhile, significant, valuable, lovable, what makes me an okay guy, what keeps me safe? If you can't quickly answer that, you need to understand that. So there's a great training that I've done right here on the Live Well coaching platform. It's called Stress Relief for Life. So if you go into the marketplace, you'll be able to find Stress Relief for Life. I highly encourage you get this, because that has PDFs all in it. That's going to help you understand your negative thought life. It's also going to help you understand your core beliefs and how to change them. But at this session, what we're going to leave it with is you have to identify your core belief and understand it before you can ever change it. Then number 2, you got to gather some hope, man. You got to listen to stories of change. You got to seek role models, people that are a little bit further along the journey. Sounds like an AA sponsor, doesn't it? Shockingly. Why? Because it works. Gather hope. Gather your people. Gather your 12 that are going to journey with you. Who are the safe people? Don't gather the people that are in close proximity. Don't gather your roommate because they live close to you. Don't gather your neighbors because they're next door. Gather the people that are safe, that you know are going to have the capacity to speak life into you. And then you just want to listen for stories of change. Who can I grab onto? What story can I grab onto in these relationships that make me recognize and believe, man, I can go forward? Then number 3, you want to design those little experiments like we talked about before. Kobe designed his experiment, and it was, I'm going to shoot 1,000 free throws after practice, but it might be, I'm super socially anxious, so I'm going to practice just going to the mall, walking into stores, and acting as if I'm a confident, loving guy. Create those little behavioral experiments that allow you to essentially just get a new foundation of experience from other people. Then 4, practical repetition. Like, you want to find skills that you can replicate. So for Alex, like I said, it was, he had to just ask people to go places. Like, that was one of the hardest things we did, because he absolutely did not want to do it. As you can imagine, he had been avoiding people for a long, long time, but man, he did. And the consistency of it allowed him to have a new experience. And then finally, you want to apply cognitive restructuring. And when you do that, you test the accuracy of the old belief and generate a balanced alternative. And there's lots of ways to do that. I'm going to refer you again to Stress Relief for Life. That has all the information that helps you go through this process with changing core beliefs, and some of the worksheets that will be really helpful. But I think just believing that if you apply cognitive restructuring to the mix, you will start to feel better. That's a certainty. That's a well-researched fact. Now, is it true that sometimes there's trauma and there's things that we've gone through? Yeah, you might have to heal some things along the way. But you'll never understand any of this until you start to get familiar with it, until you can begin to understand what my core beliefs ultimately really are. All right, so I guess I'll leave you with this. Alex didn't change overnight. Neither are you. Just because you're committed to this, just because you're going all in, just because you're going to do radical change, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be fixed tomorrow. This is work. You're going to have to work at this. But the new hope ultimately took root in Alex's life after he started practicing those small experiments. And gradually, he began to feel a shift. Like the new normal felt like this new model. Like he had built enough experiences of reaching out to people and talking to them and asking them out to lunch that he started to kind of believe what the new narrative really said, which is, I've got nothing to prove. I'm just going to do the next healthy thing. And guys, it is so powerful what happened in Alex's life. And it's so powerful what's going to happen in your life if you allow yourself to execute these strategies and just do the next healthy thing. All right. I am super glad that we had a chance to go over this. I encourage you to just earmark this thing, save it, come back to these teachings. If you feel like you need a booster shot, if you feel like, man, I just can't change anymore, man, I'm stuck, I've hit a wall, come back to these teachings. If you want more information, dig into Stress Relief for Life. It's really good, guy. I taught it, so I know that's a little biased, but seriously, the content's great, and it spells out for you exactly how you change your core beliefs. All right. Thank you guys so much for being with me. Looking forward to seeing you next time on the Live Well Coach